Hi, my name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting Group. We are an independent digital transformation firm, and we help quite a few of our clients through their SAP S/4HANA transformations. And we also help clients through other non-SAP transformations as well, such as Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics, and other leading ERP systems. And I've been in the ERP space now for about 20 years. Actually began my career as an SAP consultant back in the 90s. And one of the things that I found about SAP transformations in general is that companies get pretty excited when they've made the decision to go forward with an SAP initiative. And they go through a phase where I call it the cliff diving phase, where they're ready just to jump right into the project without really thinking ahead and planning and building a foundation for what it's going to take to make the project successful. So the goal of this video is to talk about the things that you want to do and that you need to do before beginning your S/4HANA implementation. And part of what drives this cliff diving phenomena, as I call it, is that you've got a lot of bias in the industry that's driving you to make this decision quickly and to move forward with your S/4HANA decision quickly. And some of those things that are causing those are things related to system integrators and SAP themselves who are interested in seeing you move forward as quickly as possible so you can be up and running on the software as quickly as possible. So while that in and of itself isn't a bad thing, what is a bad thing is when you're not ready and you haven't done your due diligence and gotten your ducks in a row internally to make sure that you're ready for that transformation. So some of the risks of taking this headfirst approach into cliff diving into your S/4HANA implementation, there's a number of risks there. First is you have lack of a clear operational direction. Your system integrator is likely to take control of your project rather than you owning it yourselves internally. You're going to have decisions that you're going to have to make operationally. They're pretty major decisions that you're going to be trying to make while the meter's running on your expensive consultants. And therefore, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to rush into a decision that isn't the right long-term decision, or you're going to take your time and make the right decision, but it's going to cost you a lot of money, more money than it should, because the consultants are there billing by the hour, whether or not you've made that decision or not. The other is that technology is driving your business rather than the other way around. S/4HANA is a great product, and SAP loves to sell the concept of SAP best practices, but I'm here to tell you that there is no such thing as SAP best practices. The only best practices that exist are the best practices for your organization and for your industry. So you really want your business to drive the technology, not S/4HANA to drive the way that you're going to do business. The end result of this cliff diving phenomena too is that you spend too much time and money on your project team, your employees, your executives, they all get frustrated with the project. It's too much for you to absorb all at once. And finally, and not least importantly, you have a lack of internal ownership and buy-in when we go through this process. So the whole idea here is what is it we need to do before we just jump straight into our S/4HANA implementation? What are the things we need to do to take a step back in order to take two steps forward, for lack of a better word? And the whole idea here is that we want to have a strong foundation. We want to have a strong vision for what this project is going to be, so that when the system integrator consultants show up on site and start billing by the hour, we have very clear direction for them. We have a business blueprint that's driving this transformation, rather than allowing the technology or an outside system integrator to drive our business and define for us what our business is going to become. So a framework that we use with our clients is a S/4HANA implementation or transformation readiness plan. This example right here happens to be a 6-month example, but we've done this in as little as 2 to 3 months. And for some clients that are larger multinationals, it could take several months. But the whole idea here, regardless of how long it takes you, is there's 5 major work streams or 5 major buckets of things that you should be thinking about and doing prior to engaging your system integrator, prior to bringing in the SAP consultants, and prior to incurring that high run rate that you're inevitably going to be going through. What is it we can do to get this stuff figured out and have a clear blueprint, vision, and plan for the project so that we're making the best use of those resources? And so I'm going to unpack each of these 5 things one by one here and talk about them in a little bit more detail here. So the first work stream you saw was strategic and executive alignment. It always amazes me how many companies just jump right into an SAP project without really having figured out what they want to be when they grow up strategically. In other words, what is our strategy? How much are we going to standardize as a company? What are our growth plans? What are our international expansion capabilities? What are, how well aligned are we as an executive team in terms of what our overall strategy and vision is as a company? Those are some of the decisions and activities and exercises that need to happen and be figured out prior to beginning this type of project. So the whole idea here is that we want to make sure we have a clear articulation of what the project strategy is, the overall S/4HANA transformation strategy, and how that aligns with and supports the higher level corporate strategy. We also want to have good decision on what some of the major operational and organizational changes are going to be. So if we, for example, know that we want to move to a shared services purchasing model, where instead of having purchasing groups in each of the different geographies or business units, we're going to move that to a centralized model. That's the type of thing you want to decide now and get figured out before you start to lay out what the SAP project's going to look like. Now, you can implement S/4HANA without having those decisions, but why pave the cow paths when you can use this as an opportunity to really define what your future state is going to look like, and why spend the time and money with a bunch of consultants sitting around waiting for you to make that decision when you can make that decision now prior to beginning your S/4HANA implementation. So there's just a few examples of what we would suggest happen in this strategic and executive alignment phase of your project. Excuse me. The other part of this is operational readiness. So we look at how ready the company is operationally in terms of having defined its business processes, define where it's going to standardize, where the commonalities are, where the opportunities for improvement are, where the inefficiencies are, all of that good stuff. So we want to start by defining what our current state is, but more importantly, define at a high level, what are our future state processes and what are the corresponding requirements, so that when we go to build the SAP software later on, or when we work with our system integrator to build that software later on, we have a clear vision of what those processes and requirements are going to look like, and we can tie that back to those requirements from a traceability perspective. Now, a lot of times people will say, well, SAP has best practice processes that we can use out of the box that will tell us how we're going to run our business. And again, as I mentioned before, there are no such thing as SAP best practices, or rather, I should say there are such thing as SAP best practices, but it doesn't mean it's best practice for your business. And chances are it's probably not best practice for your business. And even within SAP best practices, there's still a host of decisions that need to be made around how those quote unquote best practices will be deployed through your organization. So you still need a business blueprint, much like when you're building a house, you need to have a blueprint before you start bringing in the plumber and the electrician and the drywall guy and the guys that are going to lay the foundation and the framers and all that good stuff, the roofers. So you're going to need to have that business blueprint in place so that you can drive this as sort of the general contractor building your house. And you're going to sub out part of the work to the SAP system integrator. You might sub out part of it to the organizational change consultants that'll help you manage the organizational changes, and et cetera. So really having that understanding of what the business processes are going to be, what it's going to look like, and what your organization is going to look like operationally when it grows up is critical to have that done, or as close to done, at least for your key process areas prior to starting your S/4HANA implementation. Similarly, you want to start getting your people ready now, because that's probably going to be the hardest part of this entire transformation. It's probably not going to be S/4HANA, even though S/4HANA isn't nearly as mature as all-in-one, ECC, and R3, and some of those older versions of SAP. It still is relatively mature and robust, and it's probably going to be further ahead than your own people are in terms of managing some of those changes. So what we mean by people readiness are really starting to identify where the gaps are, where the changes are going to be within the organization. So as we're defining what our operating model is going to be, we want to understand what are the gaps between the way things are today and the way they're going to be in the future. And that's going to help us define an organizational change strategy that allows us to get there. Now, for those of you that are working within a global multinational type of environment, which I suspect is probably a lot of you listening to this video, you want to identify those change impacts by region, by geography, and understand how people are impacted differently throughout the globe, because every part of the rollout that affects these people is going to look differently in different parts of the world. And we want to have a change strategy that isn't just a cookie cutter approach, but one that's a little more surgical and precise to address the specific areas of resistance and the degree of change, magnitude of change as it relates to different parts of the organization. And then we also want to look at organizational design. That's another part of the theme you see here in the people readiness work stream, is really understanding what people's roles and responsibilities are going to be, what the overall organizational structure is going to be in the future, so that, again, we have a clear vision for what we're going to be once we get through this transformation. There's also the technical readiness, and this is really a twofold approach. One is making sure that you're ready from a system and integration and overall architecture perspective. The other side of it is making sure you're ready for more of a organizational skill set perspective. So in other words, we want to make sure on the physical infrastructure side, we want to make sure we have a clear vision and strategy for what we're going to do with our legacy systems. Which ones are we going to keep? Which ones are going to be replaced by SAP? Of the ones that we're going to keep, how are we going to integrate with those systems? What do those integration points look like? What are we going to do with our data? How are we going to clean it up? What's our data governance structure going to be? How are we going to map that to the new system? All that stuff around physical infrastructure is very important. In addition, the organizational infrastructure is just as, if not more important. So how do we make sure we're building up and beefing up our IT skills right now for what we're going to need in a post-SAP S/4HANA environment? And this helps us not only be on more equal footing with our system integrator because we have more internal S/4HANA competencies built, but it helps us be more dependent and self-sufficient longer term as well after we go live, so that we're not dependent on those consultants to stick around for too long and to overstay their welcome. How can we make sure that we've got that skill set internally so that we can own that going forward and have a stronger infrastructure in place organizationally and skill set, knowledge base built internally? So this is where we can look at some ways to train our team, mobilize an SAP Center of Excellence, make sure we've addressed the competency gaps that we have on our team now, and really beef that up so we can have that internal competency longer term. And then finally, there's the project governance and planning work stream, which is looking at how do we build the project charter? How do we build out the project team and organization? What's our implementation plan for this first phase? What are roles and responsibilities for us to take on internally versus our system integrator versus another independent third party? Where are the risks and what are our risk mitigation plans for this project? All those are questions that need to be answered and defined in your project governance and planning. And again, these are things that you should be doing and have defined before you ever bring in your system integrator. The better of a foundation you have in this area, the better and more effective and cost efficient your overall transformation is going to be. So those are just a few things, a quick flyover view of what needs to happen, the things you need to do prior to beginning your SAP S/4HANA implementation. And again, you're probably hearing something quite a bit different from either SAP or from your system integrator, whose interests are in making sure that you move forward with the implementation as quickly as possible. However, we need to look at what's the best for your organization, what makes the most sense for you, and what's going to allow you to really have a clear vision for moving this project forward and making sure that you're being as diligent and as smart about using outside resources as possible. So if you'd like to reach out to Third Stage and understand how we've helped other clients through these types of S/4HANA readiness stages, as well as just helping them through the entire S/4HANA journey overall, please feel free to reach out to me. You can call me on my cell phone, which is included here on your screen, or you can also email me. And I've also included my Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube info if you'd like to connect with me in social media. I also encourage you and ask you to please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. Hope you found this video helpful, and I look forward to chatting with you on future videos. Take care.